It was Brandon Kerr's idea from the start. He had spent nearly 2 weeks overseeing the content calendar for the As Ever brand, making sure every caption aligned with the soft, curated message Meghan wanted the world to see. Brandon, always precise and image-conscious, believed Father's Day was a perfect moment to humanize the brand and bring warmth to a Father's Day demographic they hadn't directly targeted yet. He sat in the glass-walled office on a Thursday morning, tapping his fingers against his ceramic mug as Noah, the youngest team member, showed him 3 rough cuts of the video they'd shot earlier that spring. The footage was soft and glowing filtered sunlight, trailing vines along the garden fence, the gentle swing of a hammock. Brandon watched in silence, his eyes narrowing slightly when the last clip rolled in. A wide shot of Prince Harry in the distance, his back turned, tossing a red ball to a small, laughing Archie. Brandon leaned forward, nodding. Then he adjusted the timeline slightly to end on that exact frame. He didn't ask Meghan for reapproval. The video had been concept approved already, and in his view, it was well within brand alignment. The caption was ready, subtle, poetic, and non-specific. To the fathers who shape us. When the post went live Sunday morning, Brandon was already drafting the follow-up engagement metrics. He believed they were about to generate soft viral traction, just enough sentiment to trend without controversy. But what he hadn't accounted for was the very thing he thought they'd buried long ago: Meghan's estranged relationship with her father. At first, the response was as expected. Influencer comments rolled in, praising the elegance and sincerity of the brand's tone. Lifestyle accounts reposted it with emojis and well wishes. But then the undercurrent began. A thread on X, formerly Twitter, pointed out the contradiction between celebrating fatherhood publicly while refusing to reconcile with one's own. A verified account reposted the video with a blunt comment. "Still no word to her actual father, huh?" By mid-afternoon, the tone online had shifted. A clip from a 2019 interview where Meghan had emotionally discussed the pain of betrayal was resurfaced and juxtaposed with screenshots of the Father's Day post. The narrative was no longer about love and legacy. It had morphed into a conversation about image versus reality. Meghan hadn't even checked the post yet. She was spending the morning with the children, disconnected from the internet and the noise it carried. Brandon debated whether to inform her right away. He paced the edge of the kitchen counter, his phone in hand, refreshing the comments. He told himself it would pass. He told himself it was noise, not news, but the messages kept multiplying. Influential voices, ones who had previously defended her, began to question her sincerity. The Daily Mirror and The Sun picked up the story within hours, publishing back-to-back headlines with phrases like Father's Day faux pas and selective sentiment from the Duchess. That evening, Brandon called an impromptu team meeting. Via Zoom, Meghan joined 10 minutes late, her tone calm but eyes tired. Brandon began walking her through the situation, step by step, what was posted, how it was received, and where the blowback was headed. She listened, arms folded. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask why no one had raised the red flag sooner. She simply stared at the screen as if trying to locate the moment everything had started to go wrong. When Brandon finished, she exhaled softly and walked away from the screen. No statement was made that night. No response was posted, but the silence was louder than anything they could have written. Thomas Marlowe had been up since dawn, as was his habit now. Sleep rarely stayed with him past 5 a.m., and on Sundays, the silence in his small San Diego apartment felt heavier. He boiled water for instant coffee, fed the old gray tabby cat that never left his side, and opened his tablet out of routine more than curiosity. He didn't expect to see his daughter's face, but there she was sort of. Not in full view, not speaking, but in a slow-moving, beautifully lit video clip that seemed to suggest softness, stability, family. He recognized the garden immediately. He remembered helping her pick out lavender plants for it years ago, back when she still returned his calls. The shot was brief, Harry tossing a ball to Archie across a lawn, framed like a memory. But the implication was clear. This was Father's Day, and that image, that caption, that tone. It told a story that didn't include him. Thomas didn't touch his coffee. He set the tablet down and stood near the window, arms crossed. He had long stopped waiting for Meghan to reach out. The last real contact had been the letter, painful, private, and later public. He had watched her life unfold through a glass wall, never quite able to tap on it loud enough to be heard. But the video pierced something. Not because it showed Harry or Archie, but because it showed a version of fatherhood that excluded the complicated, the flawed, the inconvenient. He thought about the cards he used to send her, birthdays, holidays, even after everything. He thought about the interviews he should never have given, and the ones he still believed were necessary. Then he picked up the phone. He didn't call Meghan. He called Peter Wallace. Peter had been a friend of the family for years, someone who once attended Meghan's high school plays and helped Thomas navigate media requests during those early, frenzied months of her engagement. Thomas hadn't spoken to him in over a year, but Peter still answered without hesitation. Thomas asked him if he had seen the post. Peter paused, then said yes. He had seen it that morning and already knew what Thomas would say next. Thomas paced. While he talked, occasionally glancing out the window as if expecting something to shift outside. He asked Peter if he was wrong to feel the way he did. He described how watching that video made him feel invisible, like history being rewritten. Without his name in it, Peter tried to keep things steady. He reminded Thomas how quickly things online come and go, how silence sometimes protects more than it punishes. But Thomas wasn't interested in being protected anymore. He wanted to be acknowledged. That night, after hours of sitting with the decision, Thomas wrote something on a yellow legal pad. He kept it short, no more than 5 lines. Then he scanned it and sent it to a contact at a mid-tier British tabloid. He didn't expect it to go far. He just wanted someone, somewhere, to know he was still part of the story, even if only in protest. The next morning, the headline read, "Father's Day isn't a performance. Meghan's estranged dad responds to viral video." The article included his statement, printed without edits. It read, "Father's Day should honor truth, not performance." Some fathers aren't convenient to remember, but they still exist. The quote spread quickly. News anchors referenced it. Online commentators dissected it. Some defended him, others mocked him. But what mattered was that people were listening. Back in Montecito, Brandon read the headline on his phone before even getting out of bed. He stared at the screen, already bracing for the morning briefing. Meghan hadn't responded yet. She hadn't even acknowledged the article. But Thomas knew she had seen it, and even if she never replied, for the first time in years, he felt like his voice had found its way through the glass dot. By Monday morning, the storm had a name. It was no longer just backlash, it was a full-blown media crisis. Inside the Montecito estate, the calm air of curated peace was beginning to crack under the weight of what Brandon Kerr now recognized as a spiraling miscalculation. The Father's Day video had been meant to humanize the brand, soften public perception, and quietly strengthen Meghan's image as a mother and partner. Instead, it had reopened a wound everyone thought was buried. Brandon sat alone in the media room, his laptop open and his phone buzzing beside him with hourly updates from analytics dashboards. He scrolled through the rising comment count, noting the shift in tone. The warmth was gone. Even fan pages were turning cautious, framing their Support with disclaimers and qualifiers. He pulled up the team chat and typed a single line, emergency sync. 1 hour. Everyone in. By noon, the core team had gathered in the strategy room at the back of the house. It was a sunlit space, usually reserved for vision boards and product rollouts. Now it felt like a war room. Brandon stood at the head of the long table, flanked by Noah on one side and Claire Yates on the other. Brandon interrupted them both and proposed a corrective post. Something vague but healing. Perhaps a general quote about chosen families or redefining connections. Claire shot the idea down instantly. She argued that anything indirect now would read as manipulative. Too little, too late. The room turned tense. And then Meghan entered. She hadn't been scheduled to attend. She walked in quietly, her face unreadable, and took the seat at the end of the table. No one spoke for a moment. She looked at each of them, and then she asked Brandon to replay the video. He did. They all watched it again in silence. When it ended, Meghan kept her gaze on the screen. Then she looked down at her hands. She didn't cry. She didn't frown. She just said that maybe people weren't ready to believe in duality, that a person could grieve a father and celebrate a husband at the same time. Claire asked her directly if she wanted to release a personal statement. Meghan shook her head and explained that any statement now would only be seen as damage control. She said the internet didn't want truth, it wanted a storyline. Brandon started to respond, but Meghan stood before he could. She walked toward the glass doors, paused, and added that she needed to think. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. The team watched her leave, and the door closed with a quiet finality. No one said anything after that. The room that once buzzed with plans and pitches now sat still. And Brandon knew, somewhere deep beneath his role as director and strategist, that something had shifted permanently. The campaign hadn't just backfired. It opened a wound that no caption could close. 2 weeks later, the silence around the Father's Day video had become louder than any official response could ever be. Meghan hadn't taken down the post. She hadn't commented, clarified, or apologized. The video remained exactly as it had been, polished, poetic, and now permanently associated with a growing sense of contradiction. Inside the Montecito home, the atmosphere had cooled. Brandon Kerr spent most of his days working from the smaller office across the courtyard, avoiding the main house unless summoned. He no longer made bold suggestions or pushed campaign ideas with his usual enthusiasm. Instead, he moved cautiously, checking sentiment trackers, redrafting proposals, watching the brand's social metrics dip week by week. Claire Yates had begun skipping meetings altogether. She called in when necessary but had shifted her tone. From strategic partner to distant advisor. Brandon noticed the change but didn't ask why. He already knew. The As Ever project was no longer about lifestyle and elegance. It had become a symbol of something else, something more fragile. It was the brand that tried to curate emotion and ended up revealing unresolved fractures beneath the surface. The final blow didn't come from a headline or a trending hashtag. It came from within. Noah, the youngest on the team, the one who had edited the video in the first place, submitted his resignation quietly. No press statement, no final meeting. Just an email sent on a Sunday morning. Brandon opened the message on his phone and sat with it for a long time before reading it. Again, Noah had written that he admired the mission but felt uneasy about the direction. He had written that, in his view, the team had crossed a line between storytelling and image control, and he wasn't sure he could tell the difference anymore. Brandon didn't forward the email to Meghan. He didn't mention it during their Monday check-in. Instead, he archived it and returned to preparing slides for a new brand partnership meeting that no one seemed excited about. Meanwhile, the internet had moved on to other things. Another celebrity scandal, a new documentary release, a political meltdown. But the Father's Day video lived on in smaller corners, podcasts, think pieces, YouTube essays that dissected every frame. One particularly viral commentary came from Azalet Esta dissected every frame. A mid-tier YouTuber known for cultural critiques. He began his video with a freeze frame of Meghan in the garden and asked whether curated narratives could ever truly replace real reconciliation. The video gathered over 600,000 views in 2 days. Meghan watched it alone one evening after the kids were asleep. She didn't react. She sat on the floor of her studio with her knees tucked in, staring at the screen in silence. Then she closed the laptop and turned off the lights. She didn't call Brandon. She didn't message Claire. Instead, she picked up a notebook from the shelf and began writing in longhand, slowly, as if the motion itself was the only way to